difference because you can't double team Jamison Williams when Mechie was out there. And we saw that in that first half when Bryce Young was running rap shot. Once Mechie went down, though, the offense slowed down a little bit. I didn't stop them, obviously, because they still got theirs, but it slowed down the track meet at least a little bit. It turned it into a football game, not a track meet to the end zone. I think we'd be remiss not to be talking about the big one, the Natty, the national championship rematch, I should say, too, between the Alabama Crimson Tide and the Georgia Bulldogs coming up on Monday, a game we will be talking about on Colorcast. And Kelcey, we kind of knew this was going to happen, honestly. As soon as the playoffs started, we were both like, well, maybe. No, we kind of knew better.
I didn't even hide it in my predictions. I literally was just like, you know what? I could try to force it and be like, oh yeah, Cincinnati gets an upset or Michigan with. No, I didn't even hide it. Like I expected it then. I expect it now. And this is, I think we're going to see a different game than we've seen in the last 3 matchups between these two. I think we're actually going to see Georgia look different because I think Kirby Smart's going to stop putting his finger in everybody's business on his own coaching staff and actually let things happen. I think that's going to be a big part of this because I honestly think he's too involved when they go against Nick Saban. He wants to be like, let's be the big brain and outsmart Nick Saban somehow, and instead of just let's do the thing that got us here.
I'm just curious what the plan is going to be with Stetson Bennett because he had a heck of a game against Michigan as well. So they blew Michigan the doors completely off him, which that one kind of surprised me. I wasn't surprised they won. I was surprised at the ease of which they won. They dominated by more than Alabama and defeated Cincinnati. Like it was the most one-sided playoff game we've seen. Well, really since last year. I want to say in a while, but now that I think about it, it's kind of the downside of this college playoff. It feels like the semifinal games every year are a wash. They're very rarely are the semifinal games competitive. I mean, there's been 38-0 Clemson blowing out Ohio State. There's been Notre Dame every time they get in, they're losing by 30 plus. It feels like Oregon and Florida State, the Jameis versus Marcus Mariota game. My Lord, was that one? I mean, it's hard to even think of one that was competitive as a semifinal, except for Clemson Ohio State 2 years ago, and then their rematches.
Yeah, I mean, it's been awful. I can't. You're exactly right. I can't literally go back other than you mentioned that one Clemson and Ohio State matchup, and honestly, I don't remember a close one ever other than that. It has been literally just get me to the national championship game, which to the people who complain about like this is why we don't need more teams in playoff. Like, what if there were more teams so there could be actual games played? Like we don't know. Like we're getting a wash of a game in the first round anyway. So why not add more first round games and see if maybe we can get one that's actually somewhat competitive? Like that's all I'm hoping for is just a little bit of competitiveness.
Let's just imagine too, like it's slightly different matchups. Maybe you see Georgia going against maybe Georgia goes against Cincinnati, a team that was weirdly competitive with them last year and was weirdly competitive with Alabama. And I say competitive loosely, but my point is it wasn't a wash until late. Then maybe Michigan goes against somebody and doesn't get absolutely their brakes blown in. You see maybe a Michigan State gets in there and maybe Kenneth Walker does play as well too. Maybe Pitt somehow sneaks their way in and you do see Kenny Pickett play and you get different types of matchups. Maybe Ohio State finds themselves in there. We saw what CJ Stroud and that offense managed to do against Utah, who maybe Utah gets in there too with who were beating up on Ohio State until their quarterback got hurt as well too. And what was the best game of the season so far, at least bowl season, I should say. Like I think if you expand it, you get better matchups, you get different matchups, which could lead. The more opportunities you do something, the more opportunities there is for an upset. It's why the March Madness tournament is so great because you can get an upset at any given moment because there's so many dang teams that have an opportunity. And I know you can't do 64 football teams, as great as that would be for us, but that I think the more games you could get, the better. So I agree with you, but that's going to bring us back to this game. My curiosity about this game coming in too is how does the Stetson Bennett thing work out with Georgia as well too? He had a bit of a rough first game against Alabama. Seemed like he had trouble just kind of sitting in the pocket and getting through that first read before getting attacked. And I'm curious, how do they use his legs too?
Yeah, this is a big question, right? Because obviously Stetson Bennett, he is a threat athletically. And honestly, as far as the arm goes, he's the second best arm on that team. And that's nothing against him. It's just not his bread and butter, right? JT Daniel, obviously, that dude knows how to throw a ball. That dude was born throwing a football. Stetson Bennett had to learn how to throw a football, but he was born to just outrun and make everybody else look very unathletic. And like we're talking like actual real athletes, he makes look unathletic, and it's impressive to watch when he runs. I do think they need to get him involved. One of the biggest things that has always affected a Nick Saban offense is RPOs. They have always been an issue. I mean, obviously this year you have much better defensive ends, and you have Toei there in the middle of the linebacking core that's literally will fly all over the place to go hit somebody, but you can still getting them over pursuing and getting them in the wrong spots and still take advantage. So I do think they need to take more onus on his run game because we have yet to see them really focus on him running the ball. Like, right, it's almost like game manager mode pops out every time Stetson Bennett gets out there. But I'm like, why not let the kid run? Let him do what he does well.
Let him scoot a little bit. And on top of that, I think one thing that will help him, and they had a lot of success against Michigan, was running backs in the passing game, not just screen pass, like James Cook on that wheel right out of the backfield for that big touchdown that ices
Twice.
as well. Multiple times. Yeah, exactly. Zamir White as well, too, on just like little check down routes. I mean, obviously Alabama's gonna fly to him, but it moves the ball forward at least. It's better than an incomplete pass. I mean, a 4-yard pass to Zamir White. Eventually you start checking it out. James Cook gets loose in the back end, who is a really good receiving back. McIntosh as well, too. We saw throw a touchdown. Or McIntosh. Yeah, McIntosh, I think
Yeah.
it was. I think using them in more variety ways in the passing game is something they got to do too, because it can't just be Brock Bowers or bust. You got to find a little something. I mean, McConkey's a good slot receiver. Like, I think those running backs are going to be the key, and how they utilize Stetson Bennett. Maybe an RPO with a swing pass or a play action, then have the wheel route on the backside. So really curious to do. And if you're Alabama, everything you did the first matchup, just try and do it again at this point. Really, obviously you won't have Mechie, so that'll kind of hinder things a little bit. They'll be able to roll coverages toward Jamison Williams, but everything you did right. Let Bryce Young drop back there. Give him a little bit of time. Keep Nakobe Dean from being a missile and Nolan Smith from terrorizing the backfield. Bryce Young's going to do Bryce Young things. He would arguably be the number one rated quarterback in the draft this year if he could come out. I mean, you can make a case at 6 and one and half a dozen the other, but he's an absolutely sensational passer. So if I'm Alabama, I'm not changing a whole lot on this game. Maybe I run the ball kind of like I did against Cincinnati early on, see if you can just get that defensive line slowed down a bit, but I'm just copy and pasting what you did a few weeks ago.
Yeah, like I'm gonna come out. That's my initial game plan. Like my first half is gonna be, all right. What did we do last time we played them? Good, we're doing it again. Now, if they make adjustments and they can stop me, then guess what? They're about to get a whole lot of dose of. It's Bryce Young and Brian Robinson, and you saw the deadly combination they had against Cincinnati. Once Brian Robinson got rolling, there was not a single thing Cincinnati could do to really slow down Bryce Young in a passing game because everything was open. You had to respect the run. You had to respect everything Brian Robinson had been doing at that point. And I mean, he went on to have a record-setting day. Now, is that always going to happen? No. But can it happen? You would have the offensive line for it to happen. So yeah, absolutely. You have a first-round tackle over there in Evan Neal. So I don't see why not. Like you have an absolute opportunity.
Heck, a potential lottery pick tackle on top of that as well too.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see him and Nolan Smith go head to head again. I'm curious to see if Jordan Davis stays on the field a little bit more. I know he's
right.
I don't want to say limited as a pass rusher, but it's clearly he is a run stopping maniac. So I'm curious how they use him, because we talked about when we color cast the game, where he at though. I mean, you can't miss him when he's on the field. Like, it's hard to miss him, and he just wasn't out there a whole lot as well. So I'm curious if they do bring him in and let him be a pass rusher a little bit more often too.
Yeah, that's a big question because this is the first time we've seen Alabama really use an up-tempo offense as well. So it's a good way for them to keep Jordan Davis off the field when they go into these quick passing attacks, when they get a first down off of a run and he's trying to run himself off, and then they immediately are at the line, trying to run another 2 plays, and he's still struggling to get to the sideline. That's going to hamper him. So this needs to be the game that sets Jordan Davis apart from the rest of the D tackles if they're going to have a chance to be able to stop Alabama. Like he needs to just put his name out there. Like, I am that dude in the middle of the field. I'm what Ndamukong Suh was coming out of college years ago. Like, he needs to be that type of guy if Georgia's going to have a chance to win this game for sure.
Absolutely. And another guy to look out for, I'm curious, is if they do have a nice adjustment, they're able to get over the top of Jamison Williams. There is no Mechie. I look for Billingsley and to be that guy, kind of like what Bowers was for Georgia against Michigan. I look for them to find a lot of Billingsley, try and get Nakobe Dean chasing Robinson and chasing Bryce Young around too. And maybe you can it's a tough matchup with those linebackers, but I think that might be their best second option as well too. But that's going to take us to your favorite part of this segment when it comes, we talk about a game. We got to put everything on the line here, push the marbles in. Kelcey, who's winning the Natty? What's the final score, and who are your MVPs?
This hurts me again every year because first of all, as an Auburn fan, these are the 2 teams I don't ever want to have to choose in any situation. Like, you're literally asking me to choose the thing I hate and the thing that hates me. And, I both options I don't like, at the same time. So, I'm looking at it. As much as I hope Georgia can win, I hope deep down Georgia pull this one off. But I just think there's too much Alabama at this one. I think there's too many options deep. You mentioned Billingsley. You're not even mentioning Latu, the backup tight end, who is just as adept as a pass catcher. You also have, countless first rounders. Will Anderson out there as the best all around defensive tackle or defensive end slash outside rush linebacker in the nation, led the nation in sacks, and nobody's talking about him. So it's a situation where there's so many weapons on Alabama's defense and offense. I just don't think there's enough for Georgia to pull it off. But there's an outside shot for Georgia. Everything would have to go right for Georgia to pull this one off for sure.
Well, we both made a compelling case for Alabama, honestly, but I'm going with the Bulldogs. I think they're going to pull it off this time as well too. We talked about all the reasons Alabama should win. We talked about they have countless weapons, but I think not having Mechie is going to be a huge difference because you can't double team Jamison Williams when Mechie was out there, and we saw that in that first half when Bryce Young was running rap shot. Once Mechie went down, though, the offense slowed down a little bit. I didn't stop them, obviously, because they still got theirs, but it slowed down the track meet at least a little bit. It turned it into a football game, not a track meet to the end zone. And we saw it against Cincinnati in limited doses, obviously. Obviously, they eventually ran through Cincinnati, but when you only have that one dynamic guy who's been practicing the whole time, I know they have other talented guys that are probably going to be first-round picks in like a year or so, but they haven't been integrated into the offense quite as much. I think that's just going to keep it close enough where Stetson Bennett can be the playmaker with his legs. I think we're going to see more of a screw it, Stetson Bennett running out there somewhere instead of screw it, I'm going to throw it out there somewhere. And I think on top of that, they're going to keep it close, and I think they're going to find a way to outsmart Kirby Smart, if that makes sense. Like the Georgia players and the scheme is going to find a way to out Kirby. And I think they're going to find a way to overcome that, especially early on when the game will remain close.
Yeah, it's funny because it's okay. Thanks, Mom. Just throw me under the bus like that. Can't ever vote for Bama. I did. I won for Bama. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm a disappointment, I guess. But it is what it is. But at the same time, like you mentioned with Georgia and Stetson Bennett being able to and then the entire offense, maybe the athletes out smart Kirby Smart. That's really been the big thing, right? Like that was the thing that got a lot of these coaches that try to outsmart the other guy too much over the hump is they finally have the athletes to outsmart them. Like they can't outsmart their athlete at the end of the day. So like, Andy Reid, you look at what he was able to do with the Chiefs, and they finally got the weapons like, Patrick Mahomes' freakish arm, Tyreek Hill's freakish legs, Travis Kelcey there. You finally got the weapons that there was no outsmarting himself with Andy Reid. He finally had the core to do it. So this might be the Georgia team to be able to do that. So
they out-talented their outsmarting, as weird as it is as well, too. But that leaves us. So you have Alabama. Who are your? What's the score you got looking at, and what are you looking at for the MVPs of the game? We'll go offensive and defense since that's how they do it in college.
So I'm gonna go 35 to 31. I'm gonna say it is actually relatively close though. But I do think Bryce Young's gonna be the big difference offensively. I think he's just we're gonna see the first time with his legs. We've not seen him use his legs to destroy somebody before yet, and that's another part of this. There's so many pieces to Bryce Young we haven't seen yet, and it's kind of freaky, and I'm terrified of it going forward. But I think it's going to be something we see everything come out. I think we see Bryce legs, arm. I think everything happens. He'll accumulate for all 5 touchdowns in my eyes, whether it be through the air or on the ground. But he's going to be the offensive MVP, and I think Will Anderson is going to be defensive MVP, just somehow shutting down Stetson Bennett enough.
That seems like a safe bet, considering I think those were the 2 guys for the Cincinnati game as well, too. Or actually, it was Robinson offense.
So Robinson and Will Anderson. So.
All right, so Bryce Young only won a Heisman, didn't win a player of the game in that game. But I'm going to go with a close game with a similar type of score. I'm looking at 27-21. I think it's going to be a little bit lower scoring game because they're not going to have as many huge plays. I think they're going to both find ways to control the clock. We're going to see Robinson get involved a lot for Alabama. I think all of those running backs can be used heavily. I'm going to go with Brock Bowers as the offensive MVP for Georgia. I think he's just going to have 100 yards and pick up a buttload of first downs. And I think the 7 running backs that Georgia uses is going to split up their yards, so none of them are going to acquire a bunch of stats, and maybe Bowers gets a touchdown, even something along those lines. He's just going to be a name we say a lot like we did in that Michigan game. It felt like every time we were on the call, we said his name. Defensively, it would be really easy to give it to Nakobe Dean because he is Nakobe Dean, and he's a future top 10 pick. Both of us nearly lost our mind on that play he made on Corum in that game against Michigan where he came flying out of center field. But I think they're almost going to use
flying out of the opposite side of the field.
Like he just came out. He was literally the silver bullet, but wearing red. I'm going to go with Nolan Smith. I think the outside rushing linebacker who also sometimes plays off-ball linebacker, his versatility, he's going to be able to track down Bryce Young in those open spaces a little bit more. I think he's going to be used as an edge rusher in the 3rd and longs, but the 1st and 2nd downs, he's going to be used as like an off-ball type of linebacker, looking for a couple of sacks, maybe a forced fumble, a couple of pass deflections. And I think he'll just be in on a bunch of tackles as well. Nakobe Dean's still going to be the best player on their defense, but I look for Nolan Smith to cement himself as a first-round pick as well, too, and just kind of like how the Colts use Darius Leonard. I was like, sometimes when we need you to rush, we're going to send you. We'll send you. Sometimes we just need you to sit there and be a maniac. I think they're going to kind of do that with Nolan Smith as well. Like what they used to do against Deshaun Watson with Darius Leonard. We're going to see Nolan Smith do that a lot as well, too. And kind of play the underneath coverage, underneath Billingsley, underneath Mechie on those in-breaking routes. Just kind of just get him in the way and let him be a nuisance. I think he's going to make some plays.
That'd be unique. They haven't done that with him enough this season. I feel like that's something they did early on in his career, but not enough this season.
And I'm hoping they do it because if I say it and can see it, and if it sounds like it might work, I want to see them at least try it. If I'm wrong, then you can go back to just putting him at D end and having him chase Bryce Young and not get anywhere like we saw in the last game because they almost eliminated him in the last game. They put him in spots where he doesn't always thrive, like if that makes sense too. So we'll see. I think this is going to be a fun game, and we look forward to calling this one on Colorcast. It is going to be an absolute blast for anybody but you, honestly. As you mentioned, the two teams you arguably want to root for the least, and this is the second time in 4 years you have to do it in the Natty.
You know, if it could just like be a beat 'em up affair that goes like multiple overtimes, I'll be okay with it because that means that as much as I wasn't happy, at least it was a good game.
I would disagree with that because I don't want to call the game for that many overtimes necessarily as well, too.
That is fair.
But I agree with you as well. So hopefully it's at least a good game. But